Hi guys, nice to meet you all. I'm Dave Higham, I'm the founder and chief exec of the Well Communities. And yes, it is a Scouse accent, but you're safe. I was going to ask Colin Cox to vouch for me. I'm one of the good guys, so I'll ask my friend Paul to vouch for me. I'm one of the good guys, so you're safe, and I'm not going to sell you drugs, honest. Oh, where's Colin now? He can vouch for me now.
What if we don't trust Paul?
Well, if you don't trust Paul, trust Colin Cox. Colin, I'm asking you to vouch for me. I'm one of them good scousers coming up the M6 and not the bad ones. Oh, he's backing out of it now.
Having worked in Manchester for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can touch that.
Well, it's good to be here, guys, and it's good to be able to share a bit of my story and a bit about the core conditions around the organisation and how we create safer environments in order for people to recover. So, as I said, I'm the founder and chief exec of the Well Communities. It's a lived experience recovery organisation, been going since 2012. And it's hard to talk about the... Am I shouting? On the phone, they say, stop shouting, they can hear you. So I'll try and lower my voice, but I don't really know how to. But it's hard to talk about the well without really sharing a bit of my experience. I'm a person of lived experience. My background, as I've just said, was growing up in the heart of Liverpool. From the age, the earliest memory was witnessing violence in the home. I witnessed my mother being beat up constantly, being booted down the stairs, blood everywhere. Every time I got up, there was smashed things around the house. And then that violence really turned to me, where there was sticks, belts, punches, whatever it was in the immediate family. And that was the environment I grew up in. And my playground was in the community. I wanted to be out in the street because I didn't like being at home. But being on and living on the streets all the time, I soon fell into drugs. And by the age of 12, I was taking drugs. By the age of 14, I was on heroin. By the age of 16, I was in the criminal justice system. I was sent down at the age of 16. And from the age of 16 to 37, I spent more time in the prison system than I did in the community. I did not know how to function in the community. So I was a bad thief because I was only ever out 3 months and I'd get caught and I'd be back in. Oh, honestly, 6 months was the longest I was out. It was like, I seemed to get caught every time. But I was constantly in and out and become institutionalised, where I knew how to function inside the prison system, but I never knew how to function in the community, because every time I got released, he said, oh David, we're going to get you the job, we're going to integrate you back into the community. And I was like, how can you integrate someone like me back in? I don't even know what a community is. What do you mean, a prison community? How we steal and how we rob and how we take drugs? Because I've never had a driving licence. I've never had my own accommodation. I've never had a passport, never been on a plane. This is at 38, never been abroad and never stepped on a plane and never had my own accommodation. I was just a career criminal. I would get out, take drugs, and I would go back in. You didn't need to introduce me to society and what it is to be a citizen, because I just didn't know what that meant. I knew how to, just going into a restaurant. I never knew what to do when you walk into a restaurant. Because I'd stand there and think, do you sit down? Do you pay first? Because are they going to think we're going to rob the food? And it was easier to jump the counter and rob the till than freaking go and order it. It was nerve-wracking and stressful. So I always went back to what I know, because I come from a traumatic place. And I viewed the world as a dangerous place. And I view everyone in it who's going to do something to me, or going to take something, or expecting something from me. So the minute I see you, I distrust you until you can prove you're an honest person. And that's a lot of people who are in addiction, in the criminal justice system, who have been through adverse childhood experiences. That's what their current mind state is. I distrust you. I feel like you're going to take something or do something to me, because the very people that are supposed to care for me have sexually abused me, have physically abused me, and took something from me and took advantage from me. So why should I put my trust? So I risk assess every engagement I have. I risk assessing for the danger. It's called hypervigilance. I walk around with a constant state of hypervigilance and where that danger is. Sometimes I create my own danger. There is none, but I create it and feel like there is. So my last prison sentence was in 2004, and I got 4.5 years. And was in Lancaster Castle, and that's me there in the prison system with a lot of other people in a rehab in prison. I got clean in prison in 2005. Working a program in there, and then that's me released and developing my own companion training that looks at adverse childhood experiences, trauma, mental health, institutionalised thinking and institutionalised behaviour. But when I come out of the prison system, there was no visible recovery. There was no people support me from the prison to community, but I'm going to go on about that. And I selfishly set up the well because I just needed to engage with like-minded people. I didn't feel I fitted in with that community. I didn't have no friends, so I wanted to build something like a lighthouse and say, if you want to break free from crime and addiction, then this is where you need to come. And that was the emphasis of starting the well. But in 2007, when I got released, I just volunteered in all services. I ended up getting my first job in a therapeutic rehab, got promoted to key worker, then got promoted to recovery lead, and all the time I'm looking at the service and we always seem to be inward facing and not really in the community, and we don't look in the community. So that was the emphasis on that, and I'll just talk a bit about that inward facing and how we try and build bridges. But you know, done by, not done to. We are capable, and the community is capable of organising and supporting itself. If we need experts, we have experts on tap, not on top. So we draw that expertise as and when we need it, and we use a hub and spoke model, but again, I'll talk a bit more of that as we go on. But what is the current landscape as I see it? I said about inward facing. People come into services, come into organisations and go into prison, and we say, how are we going to build the bridge from services to community? How are we going to link people to a prison system and to the community? And we keep trying to build this bridge of linking the services and community together. But there's cracks in that bridge. And when people are leaving prison, they're dying before they even get to their own community. We need to stop building bridges and pull these two worlds together and start working together, because we don't see no mutual aid facilitation within the services, within hospitals, within detoxes, within rehabs, within prison. We send people out and we wonder why they're coming back. If we send someone out who have come from a broken home, all they know is violence, chaos and drugs, and we do this amazing work within our services and say, go and live your life, and they go back to the community. Why are we wondering why they're coming back? Because we have a saying, if you sit in a barber's chair long enough, you will get an haircut. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. If you sit in a barber's chair long enough, you're getting a haircut. If you're associating and knocking around with people who take drugs, you're going to take drugs. If you're associating with people who are committing crime, you're going to commit crime. Eventually, you're going to do that. And they're going back into that broken community. So we need to engage them. So, you know, we need to do away and use like a whole system as well. So our hub and spoke model incorporates that. And it does away with building bridges, and the well and the lived experience organisation becomes at the heart and the centre of that. So we work within GP surgeries. We go in the GP, we're being commissioned to go in the GP surgeries. working with people that come into there, linking them, assertive linkage into the recovery community. We work inside the hospitals, we go inside and we sit by people's bedside and engage people, building relationships, and we walk people out, so they're with us when we walk people through these services. We go into the prison systems, we work on the psychosocial within the prison system, and then we don't pass them on to someone else. We pick them up and we take them and integrate them into a wider community using a lived experience and having then other professionals wrapped around on that. We work within the treatment system, so there's no bridge to treatment system to the community because we're a part of that. And a lived experience organisation is the community. Because I live in that community, I play in that community, I work in that community, I recover in that community, and at sometimes people relapse within that community as well, so they get the same support. So it's not passing to pillar to post, it's an integrated, a whole system way of working, us all working together, and that access point, that community, that Lero is at the centre. And it's not saying Leros are going to place other professions, it's not. We need to co-produce and work together in order to do that. So how do we work within that community? So an amazing Professor William White from America, if you want to look at reading around recovery orientated systems of care, lived experience, look up William White. He's the godfather of addiction and recovery, and he talks about community, and he says what traditionally happens within services is we see a dying plant and we look at this plant and say, right, what are we going to do? It's dying. This plant is dying. If we don't do something now, if we don't intervene, this plant is going to be dead and we need to do something. So we go, right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll rip it up and we'll plant it in this lovely house on the hill with fertilised soil, and we're going to talk to it, we're going to nurture it, and we're going to love it. And then suddenly its leaves are starting to get green and it blossoms in all its glory. It's like, wow, look what we've done. Look what we've done. We've saved this plant's life. We start giving our tap on the back. What are we going to do now we've saved its life? Well, let's rip it back up and put it back where we found it. And then we're pissed off why they come 3 months later, all that work I've done. But you've planted it in unfertilised soil, and that's why it's dying. And it's always going to die until we fertilise that soil and we grow that community. So when it does get planted into that community, it's in rich soil. It's around people who are going to pour into them and not take from them. So we need to make more focus on our communities and how we're making them safer places to live. So how do we create environments for people to recover? Has anyone heard of the Rat Park experiment in the 1970s? This woman has, because she heard me in the Rotary Club along. I hope I'm not boring yet, honestly. So Bruce Alexander done an experiment. Bruce Alexander wrote Globalisation of Addiction, really good read, how he sees everyone is in addiction in some sort of way, and we need to look at our social environment. So he done an experiment with rats, and what he done is he built 2 cages, and he built one and called it Rat Hell. And in Rat Hell he put individual cages within inside the cage and put rats in it, all isolated on their own in this cage. And in this cage he put food, water and heroin. And then he built another park, and in this park he put them all in together. He put straw, swings, whatever the rat would want, males, females. They were living the dream, honestly, they were living the dream. And then he put food, water and heroin in that cage. In Rat Hell, the rats took the heroin to the brink of death. The rats that were in Rat Park enjoyed the facilities and barely touched the heroin. So he blamed the rats. He said, it must be these, the friggin' addicts. It's them. Bad behaviour people. So he said, I tell you what, let's take the rats from Rat Hell, and he put them in Rat Park. And he took the rats from Rat Park and put them in Rat Hell. The rats that went from Rat Park into Rat Hell took heroin to the brink of death. The rats from Rat Hell that went to Rat Park started drinking the food. Eating the water. Drinking the food. But the rats barely touched the heroin and started to enjoy the facilities. So what's that telling us? It's our environment and the conditions we're in can create the addiction, can create the addict. So we need to really look at our environment and how we change our environment. So Carl Rogers is the godfather of person-centred counselling. Anyone heard of Carl Rogers? Yeah? So Carl Rogers says, oh, I can see this from behind here as well. So Carl Rogers says, in this one-to-one therapeutic session, if these 3 core conditions are not in place, then that therapeutic process can't happen. That person can't get over the issue. And then 3 things are empathy, congruence, being real with your feelings and with your emotions, and unconditional positive regard. So that is a one-to-one session with someone who's brought an issue and says, I've got an issue, and if these conditions are not in place, then that therapeutic process can't happen. So how do we do that on a bigger scale? Here's the plug now, Cole. Thank you for plugging that. But this is in my book that I wrote around the 6 core conditions, because I knew we had something, but I could never put my hands on it. What was different about our organisation? What made us stand out? What made us different? Because if I told you we done housing, you'd get, oh, we do housing. We do psychosocial, well, we do psychosocial. We do recovery support, well, we do recovery support. It was the intangible stuff, it was the fluffy stuff that makes us different. And it's not too similar. Some of the conditions are similar to the CHIME model that was created for mental health in the NHS. Have a look at the CHIME model about creating the right environment for people to recover. So these 6 core conditions are really important for people to recover. And I could stand here and go through each one of these around the evidence that stands alone for each condition. But what I'll try and do is I'll try and walk you through that from a lived experience perspective, and how I changed my life, and how we change hundreds and hundreds of people's lives who come into the Well organisation. So when I first went in the prison system and I was sent to Lancaster Castle, the first people I saw who were well were people that had committed crime on the streets. And there were people I'd met when I was 16, when I was sent to Borstal at 16 years of age. The lad was standing there and he said, David, no longer do you have to suffer a life of addiction and crime, there's another way. I said, well, it's so, I can't live with me, I can't function with me, because I've got a self-hatred, I can't stand who I am as a person. I want to die. People used to walk up to me and say, David, if you continue with this way of life, you will be dead. Is that supposed to scare me? Is that supposed to deter me? Because living with the torture I have going on about myself and what I think about myself and about my life, I welcome death. You can't frighten me away from this stuff, because death would be a reprieve from self, from me. And these people were saying to me, he said, David, there's another way. They had confidence. They will look at me in the eye. I thought, wow, I want what they've got. So when I walked in that prison, having to serve 4.5 years, and they were standing there, someone with lived experience, I bought in straight away. When we have lived experience, working within the system as a lived experience within our office space, when we commission Leros and working, and that lived experience working together to bring that hope to people who are coming into service that's saying, I have sat where you have. I have sat there and wanted to die. I have drove and thought about driving my car into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour on a daily basis. Suddenly, we connect. We get them authentic connections with the person with the lived experience in front of us. And that helps us to start connecting with ourselves. We invite compassion into our lives when we are compassionately towards ourselves and others, and we feel connected to our lives when we reach out and connect. I felt empty. I felt alone. In a room like this, I could feel alone and empty, that I don't belong. So I needed to start to build them true, authentic connections within myself. And that started with the true, authentic connections he had with the lived experience who was opposite me. And once I started to get that connection, I started to get meaning and purpose. Suddenly, my life started to have meaning and purpose, where I used to wondrously aim wherever the wind or look. I used to feel my life was made up of how lucky you are. If I stepped on a crack, that was it. My day was gone. That's self-obsessed. But suddenly, I had purpose. I knew I wanted to be clean. I knew I wanted to break free from crime and addiction. I started to understand who I was and get involved in meaningful activities. I never even knew what food I liked, what hobbies I liked, what kind of music I liked, because I was so obsessed. I would always like what you liked. I never knew what I liked. I would always look at the next person, how would they behaving to a mirror, so I can mirror there, because I don't know how to function. And suddenly, you know, through that connection, I started to get meaning and purpose in my life. We have to give meaning and purpose when people walk through the doors. We have to have real connections within our organisation. We can't have organisations that are sicker than the people we're working with. I was bullied in my first job because I was lived experience, because I had a faith, because I worked a 12-step program. I was bullied, and I thought, I thought everyone just loved people who work in the care system. We just love people, and we're all in it together, and we want to care for them, and we just want to love them. And I thought, what the hell have I come into? And everything, all the things that's happened from a child, growing up, being in addiction, for the first jobs I've been in, has helped me to create these core conditions, but more so an organisation where you can feel I can be in an office and I can walk out and I know no one's going to talk about me. They're going to have me back and they're going to support me because we're in it together, and we're not about blaming each other either. How can we give something away that we haven't got? So we're not being real within ourselves. How can we give that to others? Meaning and purpose. I suddenly started to have that meaning and purpose in my life. And then suddenly I've become a part of a community. I've become a part of a wider community. The individual, family and community are not separate, they are one. To injure one is to injure all. To heal one is to heal all. We have to start feeling that belonging. Yeah, to a sense of meaning and purpose, we get a sense of belonging. And we start being a part of a community. I start associating with the people I'm getting well with. I start to meet them and go and do things and have brews and meet, you know, other people. I start to be recognised in my own community and belong. Start to become a citizen. Start taking on them responsibilities. But once you're in that community, one of the most important, it needs to be a trauma-safe environment. And I just touched on that earlier about constantly being in a state of hypervigilance. When I walk into your organisation, I think you're out to get me. You're going to do something to me. And that might seem bizarre. How you're walking into a professional organisation, how can we be seeing that we're going to hurt? The stories I've heard about kids going into cares and being sexually abused, being physically abused by the very people that have been put into places to care for them, abused them. And we live the consequences for the damage that's gone before us. Because we get the people when they become adults who are constantly in a state of hypervigilance and distrust you. And then we look at the behaviour and think, oh, they're badly behaved. Is that not a trauma response? Because I don't know how to speak to you, I don't know how to communicate. I only know how to fight or flight in every situation I'm in. I'm in fight or flight mode. We need to be more than trauma informed. Because now you're informed, now what? What's changed? We need to incorporate these 6 core conditions into our organisation, into our very staff team, because some of the staff are causing more trauma to you, yourself, your colleagues, which then triggers your trauma response. As I said when I went in, I'm thinking everyone was just lovely. I'm honest, they weren't. The shock that people could behave like that. Oh no, it weren't me, because I sent an email and I sent one and evidenced the fact that I told you that, so I'll follow an email. It's all distrust. How do we want to work in an environment like that? I want to come to work and know you've got me back and I've got your back. I tell my staff, make a mistake once a week for all I care. I want you to make a mistake, you're happy to make mistakes. How do we get policies? Through mistakes and learning. Make a mistake, look at it and learn it. Let's walk on, no big deal. Create an environment of safe, and that impacts on the people that are coming into the door. It's tangible. It's tangible. The atmosphere, the feelings, the connection, the disconnection is tangible. Last condition, and most important, is hope. When people walk into your organisation, when I walked into the prison system, the first thing I got was hope. When people walk into your organisation, the first thing they're going to get is hope. That they too can break free from crime and addiction, overcome mental health, deal with the trauma and break free and not be in prison to themselves. At 50 odd years of age, they're still living in the trauma that happened when they were 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Do we instill that hope that they are going to break free and have a life beyond the wildest dreams? Because I promise the people who walk into my organisation and say, I promise you now, if you follow this process, if you engage and follow this structure, I promise you'll have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I'm not messing. And I can tell you, hundreds and hundreds of people who have got a life beyond the wildest dreams. You know, I've got my business lead here today who come through our organisation in 2015, broke on the brink of death, and I said to him, I promise you a life beyond your wildest dreams. And he's sitting here today, our business leader of the whole organisation, and he's got a life beyond his wildest dreams. And I've passed the baton to him, and he's passing that baton on to others. That we create safer environments for people to recover. And that means looking at us and social modelling that behaviour. How are we changing? How are we looking at ourselves to create that loving and safe environment? Through this model, we've had thousands of people, and I'm not going to go through the stats, but one of the stats that is a true testament to your organisation and what we are is we've got nearly 70 staff across Cumbria and Lancashire, and 60% of them staff are the gents who've walked through the door. 60% on the brink of death have come through, we've loved and nurtured and created a safe environment, and now they're working for us. is a true testament of our organisation. And they're just some of the values when we went out and talked to our communities and our staff members about our values. But yeah, it's on Amazon. If you want to look at Amazon. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm happy not to, but
Hi Dave. That's me.
yeah.
Can you explain to everybody about the flat or the accommodation that you set up in Barrow? Because I remember coming years ago to have a look at it, and it was just blew me away. And if we could have one of those in every community, wouldn't that be sweet?
Yeah.
So you can explain it better than me.
Yeah, we're getting there because we started in Barrow and wondering how did he end up in Cumbria? I'm going to put my foot in it now, so I'm glad you never backed me up there, Colin, because I'm getting upset now, I don't know why. But I was one of them people, I left prison and come and lived in Barrow, and I sold drugs in Barrow and I stole in Barrow. And when I was a prolific offender, I've got all the labels, mental health, prolific offender, you know, deficit disorder, all this, that and the other, but when I got clean, I wanted to come back and give back to where I took from, because I took from Barrow and I wanted to put something back in, and I knew there was no recovery in Barrow. I never knew what recovery was, so we opened our first accommodation in Barrow, a 4-bed house, and it's grew to over 30 beds. Now we've got accommodation in Kendal, so we've got over 12 beds in Kendal. We've just opened accommodation in Carlisle. We've got up to 22 beds, and the next place we're going to go is Workington or Whitehaven, and we're going to create that hub and spoke model wherever we go and engage that community. And the community will self-support, because we're going to fertilise that soil, because what we do is we get people well and say, right, go and open your own mutual aid, and they go off and open their own mutual aid. When we come in here, there was one NA meeting. Now there's one every night right across Cumbria, and AA right across Cumbria. We've opened so many, and that's that fertilising the soil, because it's not depend on me. Go out in your community and be an active, not just a citizen, an active citizen, which means go and help your neighbours and your community and those that are still suffering. So yeah, and we are commissioned by the drug treatment, a great partnership, great opportunity. And just in terms of the 10-year drug strategy, how it's like changed around lived experience, and how, you know, we're in partnership and being given the opportunity, recognised for the work we do in order making safer environments, because that's what it is. It's not just about drugs and alcohol, and it's about making safer environments for everyone to live. Because I want my kids to grow up in a non-trauma environment. Because this is, I'm going into another presentation now, look. It says, if you've had 3 or more adverse childhood experiences, you're more likely to commit crime, go to prison, take drugs. A lot of our children, you know, the research, and there's a pandemic around adverse childhood experiences, we need to highlight this, and we need to make our communities safe for our children in order to grow up, because if they're not, the 15, 20 years, their life expectancy is reduced for someone who's brought up in a loving environment. That's not happening, not on my shift.
Thank you. As a citizen, I've witnessed a lot of people, a lot of the time, going through institutionalised systems that were disabled, that got mislabelled and misused and then put into prison because of what people call challenging behaviour. And for me, hearing you evaluate yourself, get the support you needed, and have a really wonderful experience from it, and now build a business on it, would you be able to provide a situation where you would communicate on a broader aspect with potential advocates to prevent it from happening, that people that just need that little bit of support get it before they get put into the criminalised justice system, or try and help on the outside to give more evidence towards people, towards advocates, and they can have them on the outside as an additional foot through, as well as having your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think since I've come into recovery, it's like there's no bones about it. I speak about my recovery. I speak about the damage that's happened to me when I was a kid, because I was in addiction for over 25 years and never knew what recovery looked like. I always thought there's something wrong with me. I'm different from everyone else. The mental health, the just self-hatred, wanting to die, and I never knew people break free from that. And I think that's a crime, and I think we should expose recovery and visible. You know, I've spoke at the United Nations this year. I spoke at the United Nations. I've come back from Sweden, just spoke at Sweden, in Belgium, in Ghent. I've wrote a book about, you know, my experience and how we create. But what I say about the treatment system and the prison system, I believe the majority of people in the treatment system and the prison system are suffering from CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and we are mistreating people. Because when we look at adverse childhood experiences and that trauma and the repeated episodes, so I've done a little bit of research. Have you got enough time? I'll shut up if you haven't. Just wave me off because I'll go on, honestly. But I've done some with my own staff. 2 minutes. I'll quickly. I've done some with my own staff around. There's 10 adverse childhood experiences, and I asked that staff. I was one of them. Out of the 10, how many adverse childhood experiences? The average was 8. One person had 10. Sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, neglect, poverty, divorce. So 1 had 10. So I've had, out of a period between the age of 8 and 12, pick a 1 year period, how many repeated episodes of adverse childhood experiences have you had? The average was 200 plus. One person had 500. Imagine 500. That's someone coming into your bedroom when you're 3 years of age, or 5 years of age, or 6, and sexually abusing you. Someone beating you up every day. Being neglected every single day, sometimes twice a day. And the torture of living with that. I'd want to take drugs as well. Yeah. And then they're living with the consequences of that and the torture. And when you look at the side effects and the impacts of massive trauma and trauma in people's lives, they're suffering from complex post-traumatic disorder, and we're mistreating people. And we need to really go back and really address that and treat people different in order to create an environment where they can recover. 1 minute, I think we've got.
Thanks, Dave, for being so honest.
Oh, bless you.
And I think it's probably touched everybody in the room. And you're absolutely right what you say about the adverse childhood experiences, and sometimes it takes too many years for that to be understood. Your presentation is fantastic. I'm definitely going to buy your book. But on the back of that, I want to have a chat with you separately about those that we put in prison through mental health diagnosis behaviours. And you know, and I know, that the prisons are full of people with mental health problems.
Absolutely.
That are not really criminals, but the behaviour is treated as criminality. And if it costs £40,000 a year to keep somebody in prison, should we not particularly be looking at, is there a better way to treat these people and give them some hope for the future? Because too many of them, even for minor offences with mental health problems, are put in prison, as I very well know. And if there's a way we can work together to do something about that and get some research done, I'd really be very happy.
Absolutely, 100%, and agree with whatever you said, what you said, and I truly believe we're putting people in prison. People are committing crime, oblivious or a traumatic response, because I didn't know how to communicate. All I've ever seen is violence. So when someone said something to me, it was like, my first reaction was say, F off, and go into that kind of, but I was antisocial, I was aggressive, I was violent, but really I was just scared and vulnerable. I just wanted to be loved. And it's as simple as I just needed to be loved. And luckily, you know, I got well in prison, so we can get people well in prison, we can create an environment, and we need to create them in our own organisations and in our communities, but very happy to. Thank you guys, I'm going to leave it there.